I think we're just waiting for Chris.
Just now turned 6, so hopefully she'll be along.
So this is Alicia. Just so as everybody's getting on, I'm host, council, and presenters, so that way you can unmute yourself, mute and unmute yourself without having to raise your hand. So,
That's a great new feature.
right?
I am texting Chris. There she is. You could give Chris co-host. That would be great, Alicia. Okay. We would start recording. We are recording.
I did get an email from Thomas saying he's going to be a few minutes late. He's wrapping up another call.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. This is a special town council work session, October 6, 2020. Calling the meeting to order. I will remind everyone that is expected to, this is a working meeting. The public is obviously welcome to listen in, but we would not be taking comment from public tonight. There is a public comment session set up for Monday the 12th regarding the annexation. This session tonight is intended to have the council review the work that the Planning Commission done, and I want to say thank you, a big thank you to the Planning Commission for the work they have done in preparing a list of considerations should we move ahead with annexation that would need to go into an MDA agreement with the development team. We will be reviewing that document tonight as council and adding thoughts and comments to that, to the work that the Planning Commission has done so that the legal team can incorporate those comments into a draft of an AMDA, which we would review again as a council on Tuesday of next week, as well as reviewing the input we received from the public hearing. And then we would follow that with a final review of that MDA on the night we would be considering the annexation vote. So those of you that are if you do your participant list, you'll see yourself, the council members, as well as Nate, Polly, and so forth. You'll be listed as co-host. That means you can mute and unmute yourself. So just so you know, you have that flexibility. You don't have to raise your hand to be able to unmute. The first thing I want to review, first thing I'm calling the meeting to order. I need to do a roll call. So let's start with that. And Chris Beyer,
Here.
thank you. Carol Hazelton. Carol, can you unmute and say hi?
There. Okay, I am here.
Thank you, Carol. Bob Nadelberg,
I am here.
thank you. And Jerry Dwinell.
Here.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, we have the full council as it is tonight. So we're here and we have a quorum. As I mentioned, we're here to discuss the document that the Planning Commission has put together. And some of those guys are here as well. I don't know if you've been made co-host yet, Ralph and Bruce, but we can do that. So we've got Bruce Wolfel, Ralph Severini, and Bruce Baird is on as well from the development side. So we should give him the privilege to speak as well. Thank you. But first of all, I want to review for everybody the anchor site determination. Are you seeing this document? Do I need to change the share?
We're seeing the agenda right now.
All right, then I need to change the share. Let's try this one.
Yes.
Okay. So you may remember that at the beginning of September, we talked about determination regarding the town of Hideout public meetings without an anchor location. That expired in 30 days. And so we renewed it in September. Again, this is just a document. It's not a meeting, is not required to renew it. I just continue to watch the numbers, which are not getting better. And so we renewed it again and runs to October 21st. And at that point, we'll likely have to renew again. So, again, the reason being conducting a meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to health and safety of those who may be present pursuant to the Utah Code and the Hideout Ordinance that we passed. The number of positive cases has continued to grow, and we're not seeing great progress there. In fact, it's worked its way all the way to Washington. So we're going to continue to work this way. I think it's becoming the new norm, at least for a fair bit of time in the future. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. Let me share. Where is it? Okay, so I'm going to share first a map. Which I think you should be able to see now. Basically reminding everybody where the potential annexation area is. The little blue
Mayor, we're still seeing
finger.
the,
Right.
we're still seeing the
You are?
declaration. Yeah.
Oh, I shared it.
There you go.
Now you're seeing it?
No.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So this little finger is the connection from the hideout boundary uh, along SR 248 that gets to proposed, this is Richardson Flat Road, um, and, connects to the proposed piece of land. Again, there is, in the design discussion of all this is an additional entryway off of SR 248 into this area in the future if we were to move ahead. But this is how we would be presenting the land annexation piece. Just so everybody's familiar with that, remind you of that. I am now going to share, and hopefully you're seeing this.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sharing the work that the Planning Commission did over the last couple of weeks. Again, big thanks to the Planning Commission and all those engaged with this activity. And most recently, Ralph as acting chair, who's done a great job stepping in and grabbing this thing mid activity and moving it forward. So thanks for that. The intent tonight, as I said, is for us to kind of go through these, talk about them. Ralph is here, Bruce is here. These are conditions or requirements or requests, I don't know what the right word is, that we would be making of the developer prior to any agreement to consider moving ahead with annexation. So this is what the Planning Commission has put together. So we'll go through this in detail in just a minute, and then we will as a council. I encourage you to have paper and pencil handy as you think of things that you might want to also incorporate in an agreement beyond what the Planning Commission has pulled together. Make notes so that we can put those in as well. So, okay. So again, Nate, thanks to Nate and I don't know if Bruce was there, Thomas, working with the Planning Commission and the rest of the full Planning Commission for getting their thoughts together on this really nice piece of work. So this is their core conditions, and again, we can add to these. So I'm not going to read it out loud to you as council. I'll give you, I know you haven't had this very long, so I'll give you a second to review, a few seconds to review, and then we can begin dialogue on both what's on the paper and anything else that you think would be added here, or at least make notes to that, because there may be some other stuff in other conditions that come down below. So.
Mayor, what also would be helpful, and maybe we can do it after looking at this document, is if you have a copy of the land use plan, which shows proposed zoning, because that's also a very key component to this agreement.
That's a good idea, Polly. I'll have to dig for that. I'm sure it's somewhere in the.
Maybe
Um,
Nate's got his fingers on a copy. He could email you real quick.
Justin, if you don't stop this, I will remove you from the meeting.
Mary, it should be in the packet, I believe, the zoning we're looking at.
Justin, you are removed. I don't think it is, Nate. I mean, unless this is what you're talking about from a zoning standpoint. Polly, is this
No, I
what
think
you're
we're-
talking about? Or-
I thought we were talking about the most recent version that the Planning Commission worked from on Thursday that had
Okay.
the multiple perspectives on it as well.
Yeah, and I thought there was one with the zoning. With
Yes,
proposed
that's
zoning.
included in that as well.
Okay, so I wasn't at the Thursday session. I may have it in my inbox, but I'm not placing it right now. If somebody can find that and send it to me or pull it up, I can, you can share when the time comes as a host. Okay, so let's talk about core conditions. Any thoughts or concerns about number one? I think it goes without stating that we would absolutely want to be aligned with this.
Mayor, I just sent you a copy.
Thank you.
And
Okay, we'll look at that in a minute.
and on number one, yeah, I think the ongoing testing and maintenance as required, I think that's critical here, as well as soon as dirt starts to be moved, we want frequent and continuous testing done there.
Okay. Those of you that are attempting to get remote control of my screen, you will be removed if you keep doing that. If you want to be in the meeting, stop. Otherwise, I'm taking you out. Mr. Hammonds, last chance.
And let me note also for the public that they are able to watch on YouTube. And if disruptions continue to happen, what we can do is just boot everybody off, and whoever wants to watch on YouTube can.
And raising hands would be another thing. If you keep raising hands, this is not a public hearing. This is a public meeting. So public input is not being entertained tonight.
Jerry, are you trying to get control of my screen?
I am not. Does it say that I am?
It does.
Well, that's very interesting. Is someone spoofing me? They came in with my
I
name.
don't know. Yeah, there's another Jerry Dwinell on there.
Well, kick them out.
I will. And there's another Chris Byer. In fact, there's multiple Chris Byers.
I say we boot everybody out and let them watch it on YouTube.
Yeah. At this
Agreed.
point,
if we can't have an orderly meeting, then
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I apologize for those of you who have been behaving, but at the top of the screen here, there's a link, we are streaming on YouTube. How do they find that location, Alicia?
So they can either go to youtube.com and search for Hideout Town Council, Hideout Utah, or they could go to our website under meetings and agendas. So hideout.utah.gov, meetings and
No,
agendas.
it's just hideoututah.gov.
Hideoututah.gov, I'm sorry.
now,
And then meetings and agendas, and then the link should be there under this meeting.
now there are some known folks here like Alexander Kramer and Andy Bierman, and I think there's someone from
Yeah.
KPCW that, we don't need to boot them, but unless those turn out
Apologies
to
for
be
those of you that are
spoofs.
behaving, but it's gotten to the point where I have no choice but to remove people from the meeting. And we will not be accepting new persons coming in. So,
Mayor, can you hear me?
yes, I can, Nate.
I have 3, Bruce Baird needs to stay on.
He's on.
He said he can't get through. And then a gentleman
Well, he
named
was
Chris,
accept.
was he? Bruce
I
Baird
don't
just
know where
said
he went.
he just got removed completely.
Oh, then I thought we had already given him co-host, so I apologize.
And then I have a
So
guy
we'll
named
have to try.
my planner, Eric Langbart,
Yeah, he's there. I see him.
and then Brad Cahoon, he's the environmental attorney,
Okay.
and Chris Bender, he's the traffic consultant.
Okay.
He has to leave at 6:45, and so he may just jump off if we don't get that far tonight, but
Okay.
okay.
So we're gonna need to let Bruce back in. I don't know how we do that because I removed him thinking he was a faux Bruce. So maybe you can. There seem to be 2 Chris Benders. No. Okay, that's done. So I don't know, Alicia. Maybe you can get a hold of Bruce and figure out how to get him back in. I think once I kicked him out, he can't come back without something happening.
Okay, I'll see if I can figure it out.
Okay.
I just
Again,
sent you.
sorry for all that.
Sorry, I'm sending Alicia Bruce Baird's mobile number.
Thank you. All right, let's try and go back to the content again. Again, my apologies, council. And for the public, this meeting is held in public. It's intended for your information. We're doing this, purposefully and legally, and the interruptions simply make it harder for you to participate. So I encourage you to please manage your desires to interrupt. Otherwise, we will absolutely throw everybody off. Okay. Back to core conditions. Jerry, you were just commenting on that before we got interrupted.
Yeah, so I was just saying I agree with number 1. I would also, I don't know yet whether or not we have talk to anyone other than the developers, environmental reps. You know, if we would want to talk, I think, directly to the EPA or a third party to confirm what's being told to us by the developer. Not that we don't trust, but in due diligence, we need to make sure that we cover those bases as well and make sure that, you know, we have talked to an independent. When I see that's the last sentence, so.
Yeah.
Yep, good.
And those of us who were able to attend the planning commission meeting, there was a gentleman from the DEQ, from the State Department, and I know that the chair tried to also get somebody from the EPA, and maybe we should try to get either one of those gentlemen to attend a meeting before next week so that we can have their input, because it was very helpful information.
I think we can certainly reach out, Polly, and see if there's any availability.
Yeah.
So.
You could, if you need to, in terms of timing, you could add it as a portion of your meeting on Thursday. And there's a note that Ralph can connect us with them, or else we can do it next week, possibly on Tuesday or Wednesday night.
Okay, I'll work with you tomorrow on figuring out how do we make that happen.
Right.
Hey, Polly, this is Chris. So at one point, I think we had talked about engaging an attorney in Denver, Region 8 for the EPA. Have we made any, have we made any progress on that, or what are your thoughts?
No, we could engage somebody. I wonder if you think that if you wish, we definitely can do that.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like that to make that a condition as well, Phil, to have the developer assist us with, you know, costs of that.
That's different than a local rep, Chris.
Yeah, so in Denver and Region 8, they have all the records. I mean, that's I believe, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I believe that's the region that is in charge of the Richardson Flat Superfund site.
Okay. All right, we'll do some research.
Ralph may have a comment there if he's off mute. Someone want to take Ralph off mute?
Again,
Yeah,
you can.
I'm off
You
mute.
can unmute yourself.
Can you
There you
hear me?
Yeah, Ralph, go ahead.
Hey, Chris. Yeah, so I talked to the folks in Region 8 and the Utah Department of Environmental Quality. The last 5-year report is a published 50-page report. It's available online under the EPA. Be glad to send that link to everyone. That's the most informative report. And the cooperation between Utah DEQ and then the EPA, who basically put that report together. The EPA drove the report, and there's a gentleman by the name of Rob Parker who I invited to the meeting as well. He's the project manager from the EPA, and Mr. Bacon, Doug Bacon from the Utah Department of Environmental Quality was able to attend. Robert was out of town. And so he represented it. Neither project manager, I think, did the original 2018 report. In fact, the person from the Utah department retired. So, but they're picking up. That's their job. So I would get a hold of both of those gentlemen. And Doug said he would be glad to come back and provide independent, I guess, information to the planning commission or town council. I would go that way.
So Ralph, both of those gentlemen spoke at Planning Commission.
No, Robert Parker from the Region 8 was not available last week. He was, he was out of town. So it was short notice. It was like 2 or 3 days before, and that's when I got Doug to attend.
Okay, but Doug did speak. Can you summarize what his opinion was of the area that we're proposing to annex?
Well, that's, I'm not an environmental quality engineer, and these things get fairly technical, but I think he said, that in summary, that the area was separate from the area that Mr. Brockbank is building upon or plans to build upon, and that the needed controls were in place. There are, if you look at the report, there are a number of remedial actions in the long term, like capping or long-term capping, which I don't think have been done. And but so following those recommendations would be the guidelines. I think I don't know if he proposed those, but certainly I would want to follow those. Those are the actions that were prepared by the experts. They give at least 15 different comments to actions in that 2018 5-year review report. So as we should be following that. Brad may have some comments along that line, and would love to hear from him. We can get Doug back in to provide the exact his view of things as well. But he didn't provide any, I think, as I would classify it, counter information to what the proposal would be limited to.
Okay,
Does that make sense, Jerry?
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I definitely agree with Chris. We need to have, the council needs to hear these comments as well.
So in light of having those people come, would you still like me to pursue finding an EPA attorney to speak as well on this and review it?
Yeah, I think so, Polly. Just,
Okay.
I think that would be a wise
Okay,
additional step for us.
no worries.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's talk about item 2.
All right, so I'll start with that one. I have to admit, I only saw the plans, the different perspective views at the Planning Commission meeting yesterday. I had missed the other two. So I wanted to ask Nate about that chairlift that he has proposed. First of all, I just want to say the idea, as a biker myself, and knowing plenty of people who would be interested in yet another bike area, I think it's fantastic to think about using, that peak in Richardson Flat that's nice and steep and well situated to have a bike park. I do question the chairlift. So Nate, is this just a possibility thing, or were you like?
No,
Comment on that?
I'm committing to do it. So I'll commit to do that.
Okay, so what are your thoughts about operating this chairlift? Who's going to operate it, et cetera? Do you have like more thoughts about
It'll be,
that vision?
what we're thinking is the HOAs whether it's the commercial HOA and the, not whether, but it'd be both. The commercial HOA and the residential HOA will help, they'll pay the cost. So it'll be the residents that actually end up living there, but they'll run it, they'll maintain it. And the residents that are in the development will pay the fees as part of their HOA.
I'd probably also be looking for some indemnification there to the town as well.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we'll have insurance and everything like that too. So yeah, that'd be fine.
I guess my thought is, I guess I'm kind of with Chris. I think it's too early to decide if that's a yes or a no for the, I mean, I agree that it should be covered by all the things we're talking about if we move ahead with that. I just don't know if that's really required for this thing to be a success.
I just think we need a little bit more study around that. It's an intriguing idea, Nate, for sure. And just knowing that you're committed to pay for it, is good. I think we should, take some time to consider that with our Parks and Trails master plan and how something like that might fit in. We hadn't contemplated that before now. We had just, thought about transportation trails that are paved. And people can ride their e-bikes and get really far on them, from one part of town all the way over to the other, and then into Park City and beyond. But we just have never thought about having that kind of, I'm going to say, an amenity within Hideout. So I'm intrigued by it, but I'd like to just study it a little bit more, but I'm glad that you're committed to paying for something at that scale for as a improvement that the public can use.
Yeah, let me hire a consultant and do a feasibility study, and I can turn that in. It's not going to be done by next week, obviously, but it's something we can decide to do, if we get annexed at a later time. Eric Langvard, who is our planner, he'll talk about some of the importance, some of the things that make it important. And I'll commit to doing a feasibility study if that's what you guys would like.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Nate.
Okay.
I also had a question, road, it says in here, all infrastructure improvements that are required by law or recommended from Hideout will be paid and maintained in the future by the developer. And that includes roads, trails, sidewalks, chairlift, parks, plaza, open space, utilities. I want to just talk a little bit about roads. Are we not thinking these roads are public roads and, they would become part of Hideout's obligation?
I will say that.
I think, Chris, we're thinking about them as we were thinking about, as we did in Deer Springs, that there would be a cost. The cost would be offset by their in however the development team determines that whether they're going to do a bond or whatever, take it through fees, something like that to offset the cost, but the roads would be public.
As would
That's my
the
understanding.
trails and all of the other amenities, those would all be public, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that we probably want to add that to 2 as well to make sure that we keep those amenities public.
Mayor, this is Bruce. If I may, some of the roads might be gated and private. We just don't know that yet. But obviously the trails and everything else would certainly be publicly available. Those are details we deal with later.
Yeah, I hear you, Bruce, but I mean, I think we're saying, all the areas that are intended to be public, like the town center and the retail spaces and all those things are.
Absolutely, Mayor. I didn't want to give the wrong impression on that. That's all.
So Polly, sorry to interrupt, guys. We continue to have people wanting to join the meeting. how do you suggest we proceed? Do we let them in and
No,
tell them that they're
we don't let them in. We tell them about YouTube and send them there.
Right, people can watch and not participate, but can attend the meeting via YouTube. They
Okay.
don't need to be part
So-
of this.
Yeah, Alicia's taken care of that. She's been kind enough to put that in the message in the waiting room. So
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah,
so that's good. Thank you, Alicia. Okay. Anything more on number 2? I've made a note about making sure we put language in about public. If not, let's move to number 3.
I have some questions on number 3. So I agree with the exclusion of big box stores, and I don't see any of those being planned in what's been presented to us thus far. I am wondering though, the size of the grocery store might be in excess of that 25,000 square feet. So Nate, do you have a sense for what the size of the grocery store would be?
I actually don't. I mean, we're looking at the Harmons here in Holiday as about the same size, and I was told it was 25,000 feet. But I agree. What if this grocery store wants 28,000 feet? Or
Yeah, I would agree. I don't want to restrict ourselves to that limit, just because we're unsure and we don't know who might be interested in coming in.
And
How do we word this so that we have some ability to control it, but without being too prescriptive right now?
and frankly, I have the same issue with the no less than 10,000 square feet as well, because any small shop is now kicked out of that, and I don't want to do that either.
Mayor, there's a fairly easy way to do that, if I may. I've written these kinds of clauses before where there's what I call collared flexibility, where there's things that are presumptively okay, and then some things that require approvals of either an administrator or the council or the planning commission, depending upon the level of deviation from the core level. So they're really easy to do. It's not a hard thing. And both of your concerns and Jerry's concerns, Chris and Jerry's concerns, make an awful lot of sense. And it's hard to predict the future, so we can write. This isn't a difficult thing to write around.
Okay, and I'm also wondering what the thought pattern was behind excluding drive-through restaurant. What was the planning commission thinking there? Why we would want to exclude that?
Especially now, given COVID.
Yeah.
I'm going to hazard before they get off mute, because I don't know if Ralph is
Yeah.
going to get off mute.
Yeah,
Ralph?
I'm sorry, I'm kind of talking to myself again, my apologies. Yeah, either Bruce or I can talk to this one. This was really about, again, keeping the big box stores out, as I think everyone wanted. We did do a quick search on a Trader Joe's, which averages between 15 and 17,000 square feet. So we're kind of sizing things along that axis. Smith's is 60,000 square feet. That was published in the Park City Record. So that was clearly beyond what we wanted in scale, especially if you look further down, we added more square feet to the commercial. So, there's some relative, interdependencies between the square footage. Bruce, Baird, if you can come up with better wording for that, totally would agree. And then the less than 10,000, To some extent, we dialogued, we discussed this with Thomas, who's on the line, and he gave the input that the average, store or restaurant is not going to go above 10. So that's how we came up with that number. Again, if there's a better way to word this, I think that's probably the way to go, so that you can increase flexibility.
I'm not worried at all about being able to work this out in writing with Polly. And you'll be happy with the writing. The 10,000 square feet is probably based off of the stuff that I've seen in a lot of commercial, small commercial, neighborhood commercial. That's way bigger than little small stores that make a really lively storefront of a downtown. That's huge, actually. But we can what we'll do is we can probably just write it with a blank in the definition, and then provide some limited flexibility to do it. As I say, just within, say, a 10% deviation without getting approval, and maybe a 20% deviation from the planning commission, and then a 30% deviation from the city council, or something, some kind of collared flexibility like that.
Yeah, I'm thinking of places like in Camas, the Cutting Board, or even like Subway.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that either of those stores is 10,000 square feet.
The maximum is 10,000 square feet. All other spaces must be less than 10,000
Right,
square
right.
feet.
Right.
Oh, I see.
So
Yeah,
it's-
okay, so I read that wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, but
It's to keep your
Ralph,
stores full.
the question was really around why the exclusion of drive-through restaurants.
I think the thought from the planning commission, at least, was that was an area that we didn't want to encourage. So again, we didn't want like just a town center loaded with drive-throughs, because we want to eliminate traffic from that area. We're trying to create a walkable area, less traffic. I don't even know if the roads support a lot of drive-throughs. Whether we, make it no, meaning zero drive-through restaurants or not, is a question, and maybe we can change some wording around that, or maybe we consider where a drive-through could be placed on the outskirts of the town center, so to speak, or at the edge of the town center. But the whole idea of the town center was a walkable, community-focused area where residents can dine or shop. So that was our take. Does that make sense, Jerry?
It
What
does.
you said,
Go ahead,
what
Mayor.
you said, I guess, makes sense, but I'm going to push back on that a little bit. This is Phil. One is we're intending, right, or at least we're thinking about the idea of a gasoline service station, which means people are going to go there with their cars if they live in this area to get gas. Unless we decided that we don't want to do that, but I thought that was one of the reasons that we were trying to do this, is to avoid having to go to other parts of Summit, Park City, and Wasatch to, get the high demand everyday needs, and that includes gasoline. The second comment I would make is, while I support what you're saying, Ralph, at the same time, if we're thinking about using this as a link to a transportation network, to enable folks to leave their cars there and take some sort of public transit into Summit for recreation, and or Summit or Park City for recreation and or entertainment purposes, then that kind of creates, we sort of have conflicting goals here. So I think we need to think through that a little bit. So if people are going to park there, take some sort of transit to go skiing, and then come back, grab their car, and grab dinner, a drive-through might be a very logical fit before they go back to their condo or whatever to, with the family to do their evening stuff. So we don't have to answer it here today, but I do think we need to think a little bit about, it's going to be a mixed use type of space. So I don't think, I don't know that we're doing ourselves I guess I don't know if we're solving all the right problems by limiting, thinking only about limiting transportation in there.
I agree, Mayor, that I would push back on it as well. I kind of like Ralph's suggestion of maybe rephrasing that to limit where that is available so that, you know, we can design to it rather than just having it a free for all within what we're trying to create as a, you know, Main Street walkable. You know, a drive through there may not make sense, but it might somewhere else on the commercial property. And I think if we can design to it and make it fit into the overall pattern, then, you know, that should be workable. But I don't like a blanket restriction.
I would say those are all fair statements, particularly the one around the service station. We didn't really discuss that. So to be fair, I think everybody wants some access to some fuel for their car. And, you know, so how that gets positioned either in this area, or I think Nate at one point was talking about developing an adjoining area where there might be some additional offices and potentially an area for a service station. That's hard to design in the sense that we don't have any control. Certainly Hideout wouldn't have any control of that particular property. The other thought that we had and discussed last night was potentially using the big parking lot. So getting people who did want to ski or, you know, use the transportation facilities that we could provide to park their car there, maybe take their, you know, go skiing and then, you know, come back and then dining in a walkable sense that was close to that big parking lot. So again, you know, we didn't have quite all the information that we would have liked to, and we probably didn't spend as much time on this particular topic.
Hey, thanks, Ralph. I really appreciate all the work that you, Bruce, and the rest of the Planning Commission have done. I just want to say about a service station. I've gotten some input from the community saying they want a service station where they can get fuel. I personally think, and this is my thoughts, you know, I'm looking at California's done a mandate to sell only zero emission vehicles by 2035. I don't know if you all are aware of that. Sounds crazy, but maybe not so crazy. It is possible that, you know, in the future, we may actually be less fuel dependent, and we might not need a service station, you know, in this particular area. I just want us to think like that and try to be looking forward instead of, you know, what we are right now. Yeah, I don't love the idea personally of a service station there, but I know that some of our constituents do. So I just think service station is, it doesn't fit in with the village, you know, feel, but it is very convenient. So we definitely have to balance, you know, our near-term and our long-term needs.
I hear you, Chris, but I think we shoot ourselves in the foot. If a guy has to get in his car to go to Park City or to exit 2 where to go get fuel, then they're going to do other stuff there and they're going to keep going in their cars. So I think we really need to think hard about that.
Okay.
Once you're in your car and you've driven the 5 extra miles to get to the gasoline station, you might as well do your other stuff while you're there.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but now that I'm not commuting anymore, I'm not filling my tank every 4 days. So it's not, I'm not using as much gas as I used to.
Yeah, but that, okay, you know, we can do a survey of the community. But
We should find out what the community wants, because like I said, there's differing opinions. And maybe there's a better location for a gas station than in this particular property.
It's Thomas here, and just real quickly, I would say if you are going to allow for a service station or a drive-through facility, I think in terms of the design and layout for the town center, those would be conflicting uses. You'd want to have maybe a section that dealt with a fuel station or a drive-up facility versus a walkable town center. They are conflicting uses. You definitely want to think about that in terms of layout, acreage for commercial development, design, et cetera. Drive-throughs take a significant amount of area. There's a significant amount of pavement, same for service stations, of course. So you want to think about that in terms of space allocated for commercial development, a town center, and then maybe a drivable commercial area.
Yep. Thanks, Thomas. You said it very well.
I don't have any problems with number 4.
Yeah, I agree. Jerry.
And I also agree with number 5 that we want a staggered approach here. The last thing we want is 10 years from now still having no commercial. So we need to come up with an approach that balances the needs of funding the commercial with building the commercial.
Okay.
Before we move to
Other,
the next section, I'd love to, Carol and Bob haven't spoken about 1 through 5, so.
And I would love to get a little more input when we talk about number 5 to try to know how you want, what type of staggering you think makes sense. So maybe that's input from Thomas.
If I may, before Thomas jumps in my perfect world, all of the commercials done before any residential goes in. I know that's not doable. So there's got to be a balance somewhere in there.
And I think this was discussed a little bit later in the Planning Commission's recommendation that the commercial would be done basically within the first 50% of the phasing. So if it were 4-phase project for the entire build out, within the first 2 phases of residential and commercial, all of the commercial would be complete so that it leaned toward the first half of the project.
Carol, Bob, any thoughts on these core conditions?
I was at the meeting last night. I attended the entire time and observed and went along with pretty much the changes that they made. And the one issue that I have is that chairlift. And Nate's saying that the HOA will pay for that. And I think that's putting an unfair burden on the residents who move in that perhaps don't bike or don't mountain bike, and that they have part of their HOA fees go towards that. I think that's something that we really need to consider and talk about more.
I agree. I think that's a fair point that, maybe from the town's perspective, where, our position would be if you put in a chairlift for either hiking or biking access to the top of Richardson Peak, that the town is not responsible for running it, maintaining it, anything along those lines, and that there's an agreement for how long it will be in service, because we don't want it to go for 5 years and then be abandoned either. And whether or not the developer says, all right, well, we're going to make it fee-based then, so you got to, pay your $5 to get a ride, or some other payment option. I think that there are more options than just having it HOA funded, I guess.
Right. I've got a real issue with that.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, it's Bruce Beard, I apologize. I have a a 7:15 or 7:20 appointment that I can't miss tonight down here on vacation. But I wanted to talk for a second about number 5, if I could. It's and you mentioned, Jerry mentioned you didn't want to see, or somebody mentioned you didn't want to see the chairlift not working after 5 years. The other thing you also don't want to see is empty storefronts after 5 years. So it's a little hard to put all of the commercial in the first phase. I've done a lot of these projects where you've got some requirements of phasing, but I think 50% is way more aggressive than I've seen. Usually you trigger it to something like pro rata almost with a phased number of units. For example, you would say 20% of building permits for 20% of the buildings for commercial have to be taken out on or before you get the 20th percent of the building permits for residential. And then they would trigger essentially, I think the Latin is in pari passu, in equal measure. So you would group them in increments of, again, either 10, 20, 25, 33%. So, because it does, as we all know, it takes rooftops to drive commercial. And frankly, commercial sometimes just comes when it comes and you can't always control it. So I would just caution you to be not too aggressive in that. I mean, I'm saying this as a lawyer, but also having done this on a number of projects. So my suggestion would be something like, as I said, maybe 20 or 25%. So you have to have put it, you've started the building permits for 25% of the commercial before you get to put your 26th percent of residential in, because the commercial always trails the residential.
And Mr. Baird, I think you understand what our concern is here, and I'd be happy to entertain a proposal from the developer side to say, here's what we think is workable, and then we can, that's a starting point for us to have some conversation about.
I appreciate that, Mr. Dwindle, and you and the council have always been very reasonable about that. That's why I wanted to bring it up, because let me just give you a 2-second war story. I had a project in Layton where there was a residential component and a commercial component. The commercial component was sold off to somebody, and the residential development assumed that they would be building it in time, because it's quite common to sell the pads. So unfortunately, the developer of the commercial pad had a significant financial setback and wasn't able to begin the development of the commercial pad. So the residential pad was all held up completely. But I'm certain that we can write around it with your input that we've gotten, and we can present you with a proposal that we can work from.
I'd just like to make a comment that you said we need the rooftops. The rooftops are there already. I'm thinking about all the rooftops along the 248 corridor of all those people who are dying for commercial. So I don't think it needs just to come from the developer.
Absolutely. I wasn't implying that these are only new rooftops. But I can tell you, having dealt with a number of these commercial builders before, that they have many of them have very exacting standards of how many rooftops have to be within QRS QRS radius or ABC time, and they can't be within QRS, XYZ of a competing center, for example. And those are variables that are tough to play with, but I'm not suggesting in any way that it's related only to this project. However, the town center commercial core, the more you actually have residents within a walkable distance, for example, of a local restaurant, the better it is. Sort of like in Salt Lake City, they used to have these what they called B3 commercial corners at 9th and 9th and 15th and 15th. 21st and 21st, for example, and they were specifically designed to service the nearby walkable area. And frankly, they're a very large success. Like I say, 15th and 15th and 9th and 9th, they work great, but the rooftops in the local area had to be there in order to support the walkability nature.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Thanks, Bruce, for that. I think we have to anticipate that there are going to be people that are driving and parking into the Hideout Town Center. I mean, part of the vision is people, as the mayor described earlier, you know, people might go skiing, leave their cars, jump on a bus, go to one of the resorts, come back, throw their gear in their car before they get in it to drive home, wherever that may be. Then hopefully they'll use some of the, you know, restaurants or other services that are available in the town center. But I think we have to anticipate that we're going to, it's almost like a, I'm thinking of this as almost like a magnet area for transportation, transit, and then having services there available in combination with having services that the folks that live around the Jordanelle, in the Jordanelle area will drive past, want to stop at, and use. So, you know, we've got the rooftops along the 248 corridor. We've got you know, more and more going in Hideout. Then we have all of the stuff in the MITA project area that's coming.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I wasn't trying to imply that it wasn't a complex calculus of various things. And we can make you a proposal for, we'll get together very quickly and make a proposal to you about how to stagger this phasing of the relative commercial versus the residential. We'll give you something in the next day or two.
Yeah, that would be great. And you know, folks that live in Summit County know that both Kimball Junction and Quarry Village had quite a bit of empty commercial space for a long, long time. We definitely don't want to have that happen in the Hideout Town Center.
And that's all I was trying to point out. And I really appreciate it. And I apologize for having to leave a little bit early tonight.
Right.
No problem, Bruce. So council, I'd like to throw out some other thoughts for core conditions to, you know, to think about. Okay. So one would be a feasibility study for the overall project needs to be conducted to ensure that just what we were just talking about actually happens or not happens, depending on which way you're thinking about what we were talking about. That it's in a location that will attract people and from a study standpoint, and that they would want to be there, and therefore would want to use this stuff. So I think to me that's a core condition. Another one would be that we have to address the utility and public services prior to any development approvals moving forward. We got to get to where and how all the water and sewer and all that kind of stuff is got to get
Police,
managed.
fire, EMS.
And then exactly, and then the public services as well, and how that would be done in a way that doesn't impact the tax rates directly. So we got to figure that one out.
Mr. Mayor, can I stop you on that one before I leave? That's very wise and that's very easy to do. We can do that inside of 2 paragraphs. I've written those kinds of clauses, and they're not hard to do. And it's right. Frankly, I think they should be in every development agreement.
Additionally, I think we need to address wildlife impact. Whether we need fencing, wildlife bridge tunnel, we need to think about that. We need to address pedestrian access across SR 248. we know there's a proposed lighted intersection at Browns Canyon. But I don't know if everybody's going to go up there to get there. So we need to be thinking about how do people walking from the Wasatch side of the hill, how do they get into this area safely? So we have to think about that one. And again, I'm back to making. We can't list everything, but I think the one of the purposes is reducing trips to Park City and Summit County retail centers. So we need to, we talked about grocery and gasoline, but what other kinds of retail do we want to and we talked a little bit about restaurants, but what other kinds of services, would we want to try and drag in there to make it as useful as possible, and again reduce those trips in. So do we need dry cleaning, laundry? Do we need a UPS store type of thing? What are the kinds of things that we want to be challenging the commercial folks to be trying to bring to the table? And Thomas, maybe you can help us with that in preparing sort of A, B, and C kind of priority list of the kinds of things that should take trips out, because I think that's really what one of the things we're impassioned about. And associated with that would mean we need to figure out at some point how do we work with the neighboring municipalities on the transportation service if we go ahead. And I mean, that's not in here per se, but we got to figure that out, because again, that's part of our vision, is connecting to a transit network. So we've got to put some thoughts in there. So those are a few areas that come to mind as I was reading through this.
And I've
So
got two more to add.
I don't know how many of these are core conditions versus something else, but
Yeah.
I'm throwing them out.
And I've got
Polly,
two
I'll
more
give
to
them
add.
to you. I'll give them to you in writing, just so you have them
Well, they'll
available
be in
as
the
we start to
minutes as
think
well.
about crafting. Yeah, but she's got to write maybe before the minutes are written.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. So I have two. One is a traffic study. I read further down in the Planning Commission's comments about some of the traffic person that spoke at the Planning Commission, and one of the statements in there said something about the Browns Canyon access. And frankly, people are going to drive that way, but I want to encourage them to take a different route. I don't want to run traffic up Browns Canyon, Richardson Flats. Even though there's a light there, I want to give people a reason to go somewhere else. So the traffic study, in my mind, I want to make sure that we've provided access to this that doesn't necessitate that additional traffic is going to come up that road. I think our Parks Edge and Retreat at Jordanelle Wasatch Springs neighbors would appreciate that. We don't want to drive additional traffic up that road. Again, I understand people are going to do what they're going to do, but I don't want our traffic study to rely on additional traffic being piped in through that corridor. So,
well, Jerry, I know I appreciate you thinking about our neighbors. I'm just thinking about the folks that live around the Jordanelle. I mean, that right now is the access. They're not going to drive over past Round Valley and then make that left turn.
no, I get that.
So
I'm just saying, if they're not already on, if people are driving on 248, I want to give them a more desirable entrance to this area than saying, well, they're gonna turn at the light at Browns Canyon because that's the easiest way to get in. So, and I think I read in there, and correct me if I misread it or misremembering it, but the traffic study was relying on that Browns Canyon, Richardson Flats area or road to carry some of the traffic. And, I want to do whatever we can to ensure that we don't make that road significantly more trafficked. So the other two access points, if there's something we can do there that is going to make more traffic go those routes, to incentivize drivers to use that instead of the Browns Canyon one, or at the very least that the traffic study that is commissioned doesn't include that road as an alternate access point. If we assume there's X number of cars, they need to be handled by the other two access points, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, Jerry, I think it's going to be, we'll have to get them to incorporate their thoughts around the new Jordan Hill Parkway, because that thing's going to have a grand opening in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and it's going to drive a lot of traffic, I know.
It's going to drive all the traffic right through that neighborhood that those guys are so worried about.
I know.
And it's unfortunate for them that it's coming. And when they get up there, they're not going to hang a right, go out onto 248, go down 2 blocks and hang a left.
Yeah, understood.
So we got to think about that.
Yeah,
somehow.
like I said, the traffic that's already on Jordan Hill Parkway, they're going to, if they're going to the town center, that's the way they're going to go. They're not going to go out on the 248 and then come in the other entrance. But if you're coming from, the 248 corridor on either side, I'd rather them come in the two new entrances than thinking that the Browns
Agreed.
Canyon intersection is the better way to go.
Agreed.
So there's that. And then the other thing is I want to incorporate dark sky into this as well. I don't want to throw a ton of light pollution up at the sky in this area that's going to, ruin the sky views for folks that are around it.
Just a good thought. I like it.
Yeah, I think we just need to pass a dark sky ordinance, Jerry.
Sure,
make it work for the whole town of Hideout. But, knowing that the parking lot at Richardson Flats already there and already lighted.
Yeah, but it is down lights.
Yeah.
So, we need to write something in that gives a nod to our dark sky desires, and that helps us go there. We don't have it now
Right.
in the town. So, let's get it in the MDA since we don't have an ordinance today.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree with you there, Jerry, because we've been relying on that with our other MDAs. So,
yeah.
Yep, totally agree.
Other comments from the council on these, call them core conditions?
Hey, it's Bob. First of all, everybody has brought up some very good points. I'm actually very impressed. I just want to back up to the proposed chairlift thing. Is that something that we would envision using year round? Maybe groom or make the right of way for some slopes to be used for skiers or snowboarding? Or is this more envisioned as summertime only type thing?
My vision, this is Nate, it was just a summertime hike and bike.
I mean,
Okay.
if we groom those trails for fat tire bike and snowshoeing, for example, then it's possible that we might look for a year-round type operation. But I don't see skiing and snowboarding there. I don't think that's the answer. But it could be part of a snowshoe cross country or fat tire bike type network.
Oh, all right. Interesting. Chris had brought up that with technology, electric vehicles would soon be taking over the majority of gasoline vehicles. And I do think we'll see that in the next couple of years. Along those lines, I can tell you, anybody who has not yet test driven an e-bike, when you get on an e-bike, you will buy one. Ask me how I know that. So And Chris, you can come over and ride my wife's e-bike anytime. I'm just warning you, you're going to be out a couple of $1,000 when you go to the store and get one. So
If you can find one, right?
I know you're a purist, but it already happened to a former councilman Shadle. So it's something to think about. I can say with confidence that within the next 2 years, most bicycle sales, if not sooner, will be electric assisted bicycles. So the chairlift is an intriguing thing, but that might soon be an obsolete technology with respect to cycling. Other than that, that's all I had to say. Great comments, guys.
Bob, I want to respond to that as well, because I see this as not just a bike opportunity. I see it as a hike and walk opportunity as well. And we are an aging community, and there's today and as growing more and more people who would love to walk down the mountain but don't want to walk up the mountain. So having a lift served trail to be able to go up to the top, and I see in the latest plan there's a deck or an overlook and some benches set up there. So even if you just wanted to ride up to the top and see the great view and then ride back down or walk back down, that's a segment that I think that we want to serve as well.
And Jerry, along that line, the Planning Commission also had made recommendations for consideration of a similar type of chairlift that could go down the other side of the mountain to connect to the trail system. So toward Deer Springs, Deer Waters, that concept of bringing the trail plan all the way, offering people
interesting
accessibility up and then down into the town center, takes more people off of Jordanelle Parkway, takes them off of 248, and offers a pretty extraordinary evening out if people take advantage of that and it's designed right. So I think the Planning Commission was actually thinking in that along that same vein.
That's good, because the views up there of the Jordanelle should be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they are. There's a new trail on the other side of that hill. So, and the views are amazing, but it was put in by Sky Ridge and Mountain Trails. It's fantastic, gorgeous, be great. But that's on the other side of that big hill that you're talking about.
I agree with Chris. I might have hiked up there one time. I don't recall. Nice view. Hey, and then and if we could get back to, I'm very concerned about the traffic. I don't want to see a lot of traffic funneled through the Black Rock Canyon area. It's bad enough as it is. Plus, it's not fair to those people. If we were to have shall we say, a main entrance to this development, would that be basically due north of the annexed area and then tying into a 248? Is there any way we can maybe even access US 40, or would that not be possible?
Yeah, so Mary,
Bob,
you've got the plan on your other tab there if you wanted to show it, but they've currently drawn 2 entrances off of 248. And of course, we don't control the land between there and US 40. And UDOT, I don't think would be too keen on us tying in there. But if you scroll down there, Mary, you could see the 2 entrances off at 248. You got to keep going. It's all the way at the bottom. It's slope side up is how it's patterned. So
Gotcha.
Oh, it actually doesn't show it connecting there in this one, but the arrows, you see the arrows there as they point to 248. So there'd be 2 entrances off of 248. Down at the bottom, you see there's 2 roads with arrows on them. Right above where it says
one here.
Yep, one there, and
Condo
then
Hotel. Up by where it says Market Grocer.
well, that's the Richardson Flat. So there's 2 of them at the bottom. One says access to Highway 248.
Oh, yeah,
And then the other one is right above where it says Condominium Hotel. So both of those roads extend all the way to 248. And I don't know if the
here. Gotcha.
Yes, and I don't know if the developer would be willing to do a overpass, underpass, or something there that prevents cross traffic on 248. I think that would be an encouragement for people to use that, rather than having to cross traffic with a left turn or, such.
Now, that would be
Yeah,
a significant modification, but we
Yeah.
certainly can be approached. I also know that there has been interest expressed on, as part of the work I was doing with UDOT on the corridor agreement, there has been interest expressed on trying to figure out how to come off of 40 to again make the Richardson Flat parking and transit be more easily approached. So I know that the county has done some preliminary thinking about that, but we'd have to explore all that.
Yeah, I think that would be critical to have some sort of underpass, overpass, accessing 248, and even more so if we could tie it into 40 with a dedicated entrance. In my opinion, one of the greatest failings of the Kimball Junction area is just the traffic bottleneck that creates at the multiple traffic lights. Had they been able to access tie that directly into Interstate 80, I think that would have solved a lot of Park City's traffic issues. And maybe along those lines, if we would have the authority to do this, given the cherry stem part of the potential annexation, I think having an underpass at the Browns Canyon intersection would also be beneficial to the community. I made the mistake of attempting to cross that intersection on my bike once. I will never do that again. Never been so scared in my life. So that might be some other things we could look at to help benefit the community.
Well, we do have a pedestrian / bike type over under in the corridor agreement, Bob. But when we're talking about
Oh, great.
motor
Okay, I missed
vehicles,
that.
that's a very different kind of over under. So that's a pretty big thing to look at. We can add it to our list of things to consider, but it's going to be a much tougher sell. They've agreed to lighted intersections. The interruption to traffic. I don't know. We'll have to find out. It's certainly worth asking.
My
All right, thank
traffic study should be done tomorrow, based off this plan. And so I'll forward that to I guess I'll forward it to Alicia and she can send it out.
Yeah.
But it should be tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
Okay. Good dialogue, guys. Ralph, are you still with us? Seem to be.
I'm here. So,
Can you help us with this next session? Because I know you guys did a lot of dialogue about this, so I don't want to try and interpret the exercise that you guys went through on these space changes. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
yeah, I think at a high level, the premise was to reduce the density, encourage fewer townhomes, and so reduce the density, encourage single family homes as a primary basis for the residential. Number two was to encourage twin homes. I think there was a common comment that the 4 and 6 kind of plexes just weren't making it. They were obtrusive and not making our environment and living conditions suitable. So we wanted to reduce that. And even if you look at Park's Edge and the Black Rock, so you've got those kinds of scenarios. So achieving a greater balance. I think we wanted to create an environment where we had enough affordable units, so to speak, and the cottages reflected that. And then the deed restricted cottages and added that to the affordable multifamily. That brought us up to a count of 80, which satisfies the 20% requirement, so to speak, of affordable housing. Maybe perhaps we don't need to achieve that currently, but that would be then our achievable mark in the future. So we wouldn't have, if we were short, we wouldn't have to go out and think about where we'd add 5. So those were some of the considerations. We felt that the condominiums were okay, but we wanted to reduce the density around the town center. So those were the considerations at that point. And so if you look at the density of the condominiums at 184, I think that was a number. Take a look again here as you moved off of that. 194. Yeah, we dropped that down about 60%, primarily to, again, encourage some use of condos around that area. I think there was even a condo hotel that's considered in that location that Nate had, and essentially just wanted to reduce the density, and, maybe encourage the size of the lots, and further balance out the approach to condos, townhouses, and single family homes, with achieving a greater balance with single family. So that was the idea. And the idea on the commercial was actually to
Before you move off that, Ralph, can you describe what cottage and deed restricted cottage is in your mind here?
Well, and I'm going to have Thomas jump in because he had a good definition around the deed restrictable cottages. But this is kind of, smaller homes that are either purchasable by maybe a young professional, perhaps. I'm not going to characterize this exactly, but a new professional coming into Park City to work, where right now they're priced out of the Park City market. And then the deed restrictable cottages would be kind of a small group of homes that would be affordable for perhaps even a young couple with a child, so to speak, to get started. So that was at least my thoughts. Thomas, do you want to add some flavor around the cottages?
Sure. I think that the cottage concept that was discussed was basically looking at smaller home design, and in lieu of the townhouse concept, really looking at the 1,000 to maybe 1,750 square foot kind of range. 1,000 to 2,000 maybe was the idea. And so that's where the cottage detached units came from. And then the deed restricted cottages was kind of the result of looking at the numbers in total and making sure that the affordable multifamily that you see 2 lines below, that would basically be an affordable deed restricted rental product to cater to the workforce population. The deed restricted cottages would also be in the affordable workforce range. Maybe they're more in the 80 to 120% of AMI, but the affordable multifamily rental could be 30 to 80% of AMI. So it was just addressing the entire housing ladder in terms of affordability. But
so the deed restriction is the percent of affordability. Is that what you're talking about?
That's right. That's right. And so, of course, those details would have to be worked out, but it's not an uncommon method to address variation in terms of housing type, as well as affordable housing, which is typically thought to be about 60% of area median income and down, and then workforce housing 60 to 120%, just simple definitions, but just addressing a variety of housing typology.
So, it provided a greater mix, and reduced density. And I think that there were some good suggestions. Actually, I think Thomas added, kind of brought in the cottage concept a little bit on both ends. So I think everyone kind of liked that. And then we balanced the numbers so that we got the 80 out of 400 that would be affordable housing.
Yeah, I like the idea of twin homes. If we're talking about townhomes, that they'd be twin homes. I'm not a fan of the 4 and 6 plexes. They're kind of monoliths. And even though we now have a monotony clause in our code, such that building A has to look different than building B in some defined ways, they still tend to be huge blocks of buildings. So I do like the twin home idea. I'm not sure I like the reduced density. This might have cut a little too deep to the bone, would be my concern. If this is, the developer certainly welcome to weigh in at some point if these numbers are even workable. At some point it has to be doable for the developer. And do these numbers work?
Yeah, I mean, let me digest this. We already had 206 acres out of the 340 as open space, but I mean, this is more than I had even anticipated. I was not invited to the meeting yesterday. And so this is my first time seeing this also. And, we talk about overpasses and underpasses and ski lifts and chair lifts. And then we talk about no density. It's pretty tough. I mean, I think we're about 1 unit an acre, and out of that 80, 120, well, we're at 1.2 or so, and then 120 of that would be affordable housing. And I don't know that much about affordable housing. I mean, I do on the apartment side of it, but my understanding from Ivory Homes is they lose over $100,000 affordable house in their Park City Heights. But it's something they agreed to do. And so, you've added what, 60, so that's about $6 million in losses, I guess, to this. And then took away all my density. Can I have Eric Langbart speak to a couple issues, not issues, but maybe just kind of go over our plan really fast and kind of see, I think the cottage idea is a great idea. We have some townhomes and twin homes in our plan, but we can take out a lot of those and put different cottages and but yeah, that's a big cut for yeah. Eric, do you guys want to hear from Eric? He's the planner.
Yeah, I put the drawing up, at least I think I put the right drawing up, Nate.
Yes, that's
that
correct.
we looked at.
Yeah, you did.
So yeah, if Eric wants to walk us through this, just to give us what's going on with his head, that'd be great.
You don't want to know what's going on in my head.
All right, well.
No, thank you, Mayor. So this, Eric Langbart with Langbart Design Group. I appreciate the time. I'll touch on a few things, and I think that the direction is a good one as far as, we hear you about the twin homes and the objective here, but sitting there and hearing a lot of the wishes and then balancing that with, and I think Nate touched on it, with that size of a density reduction, I can tell you it's not going to pencil. The definition of a town center is a more dense core. So I think that if we can separate a couple of the issues, between, not having 4 and 6-plex townhomes versus, not having density that can help support a town center and the amenities that come with not only the town center, but, the rest of the project. Those 2 roads that do head out to 248 have no development on them. Currently, those are expensive, underpasses, the ski lift, et cetera, really gets to be a pricey endeavor. And everybody thinks that developers just print money, but I can tell you that the margins are slimmer than you can imagine. And so those are kind of the things that I think we need to have more dialogue on. The town center is something that we envision as a location. And I think, especially if you look at the 3D imagery at the back of this slideshow, we've really been sensitive to placing, density in pockets, in saddles and in depressions and behind, hillsides and ridge lines and clustered. As Nate said, we've got almost 60% open space. Even at the density we're proposing, even if you include all of the affordable housing, we're at 2.4 units to the acre. And I would argue that's, for a town center amenitized community, that is extremely low, for any sort of development. Notwithstanding, the issues that you're talking about, I think that, our position is one that, to do those things, you know, it's going to take a little bit better balance, I believe.
Well, I think you've heard some of our concerns, so, you know, I'd ask you to, you know, go back and see how you can incorporate those concerns and still, you know, meet the objectives that you're trying to make as well.
Yep.
But I think you're hearing that different building styles to incorporate different parts of the market, you know, different approaches and less monolith,
Yeah.
generally less density.
Yeah.
Come
And
back to us with something.
yeah.
So Eric, could you, this is Ralph speaking, could you achieve, and here, you know, here's the rub, you know, obviously we wanted to reduce density, maybe increase the lot size. Perhaps as we talked about in the first meeting, Nate, you know, in the prior planning board meeting that you did attend, was increasing the value per lot, so to speak. So if you can look at that, Eric, and achieve the balance of financial, you know, stability over time, that this makes sense, so to speak, to achieve some of your results with some of the results we want. I'd say that to me is where we want to get to. Now, if there's a better balance that you can formulate within your next proposal, I'd say that's where we were thinking as well. But I think we're kind of cutting at this point, figuring that you know, to achieve the overall goal, let's put these numbers in, and then you might come back with something else to achieve the at least minimum financial feasibility. But I would say, back to what Mayor said, those things should be evident to us in some kind of, you know, either study or, you know, finding based upon a third-party report. And Nate, that was also brought up in a prior meeting as well. So if we're going to do a economic feasibility study here, it should come from a third party. So if you went back and said, oh, we need 300 homes to substantiate this economically, then I would say show us the numbers, and it should be from a third party. So to balance that out, that's my comment anyway.
And we haven't, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, sorry, Jerry. You might want to say your thing, because I'm going to spin us in another direction.
Okay, so, you know, we haven't quite got to it yet, but I also note that we're calling for additional commercial over what's been proposed. And I think going back earlier in the conversation, the difference between the walkable commercial and the drivable commercial, maybe it's the drivable commercial that we can add that bumps up those numbers on the commercial side.
And I'll just touch on that. This is Eric again. The challenge with the commercial is parking. Yep. And so we've got a limited space. You know, we talked about drive-throughs, and if you look at like a Del Taco, for instance, it might be 4,000 square feet, but it takes up, you know, proportionally a large land area. So to bump the commercial up, it is challenging just because of the parking. And just for reference, a urban Maverick is about 1.5 acres. And those buildings I think are also in that 4,000 to 5,000 square feet. So that's really kind of the rub as far as, you know, bumping commercial up. We just don't have the land area to do it. That's flat, or you know, unless we were to remove the school, which is one of the flatter sites. You know, so that's a discussion that we probably need to. I'm glad you pointed that out, Jerry. That's a discussion we need to dive into a little bit more at some point too.
Well, Eric, then you're not going to like the next thing. So first of all, before I say anything about the school, can we go back, Mayor, to the display of the project concept? So I'd just like to ask a few questions because I didn't get a chance to do this prior to this. So Eric, what are some of the lot sizes that you have in this concept? I see there are some larger lots and some smaller lots. And what are you guys thinking?
Yeah, so we were including primarily 6,000 square foot lots as a minimum. You know, we were trying to meet the existing zoning. You know, so the cottage conversation, I think we were actually pretty interested in, but the code currently doesn't allow that within, say the R6 zone on a cottage
Well,
lot. Maybe
It
goes
may
beyond.
if you do clustering. So
Okay.
clustering is the way that you get a break on some of the easements and such by clustering and leaving more open space. So look into that to see if
Yeah,
that
and
gets you there.
okay, and that was just conversations we'd had with Thomas that we didn't really know for sure if we could get there, but yeah. So our lots, were 55 by 110s, kind of as a minimum, and then obviously the townhomes you can kind of see that they're all alley loaded and fronting onto greens, and that those would be within that R20 zone.
Eric, tell them what our bigger lots are and the medium lots. I mean, the small are 55 by 110, but
Yeah, and then some of the larger ones, start to get into, 80 foot wide, 80 by 120, so they're a quarter acre. What we see is once you, especially when we, Mountain West and water and maintaining a yard and this village setting is a different environment where, park space is your common area that you utilize, and, minimizing the amount of landscape within a lot, a lot of front door focused, kind of new urban model here, balanced with the fact that most of the site is not flat. And it may seem flat when you're out there, but when you start to look at the slopes and the slope maps, it's still some topography that we have to deal with on each of these lots. So it's a little bit more like, what you start to see in and around Main Street and how they have to deal with, uphill or downhill lots off of a road. So, larger lots, we don't know that they necessarily are going to exponentially add value. A 10,000 square foot lot is not going to be worth twice what a 5,000 square foot lot is. So we have to find that balance. And I think to Ralph's point, we have to dive into that, Nate, and start to illustrate or understand what those numbers and impacts really are.
Hey, thanks, Eric. So in my opinion, I think people need a place to live, right? And there's a lot of real estate here that's just completely out of reach of a regular person. And I am hoping that what we might be able to do in this area is to, make it more reasonable. I know this is going against a little bit what our planning commission may have asked for, but with larger lot sizes and stuff. But I just feel like, clustered density is a good thing. I actually really like your concept, Eric. I went out there today on my bike and took a look, tried to envision stuff on the hillsides. And yeah, I can see how steep these areas are. I can see how the potential assisted living center is like tucked in this little nook of a hillside behind it. It's sort of like a perfect little location. And a very good use of that particular topography, I think. I just, in general, I'm actually really impressed by this, this concept that you have brought to us. The one thing that I have had some concern with is the size of the school parcel. One of our big challenges, and yes, we have not talked to the Park City School District yet, but one of our big challenges is the students.
Summit County School District, right, Chris?
No, this is Park City School District. In this particular piece of property is within the bounds of Park City School District according to their online map.
Okay.
So it's not South Summit, it's Park City. So we haven't had any discussions whatsoever, but if we were ever to have a school in this site, I think 5 acres is not big enough. I mean, the advice I've gotten is to double that to 10 acres. We don't know what school we would have there, presumably an elementary school, only because to meet our personal needs, to get our students from having to be bused 18 miles to go to their elementary school down a very steep hill and in the opposite direction of their parents who are going to work in Park City. The kids now are being bused down to Heber to elementary school, which is really far away and ridiculous. But the vision is, can we get more families with children living in Hideout and have them perhaps have a school site that might have maybe some buffer space or ball fields or something on it, playgrounds, whatever, that would be part of the school. I'm just concerned that 5 acres is not very big.
Chris, if you look at the last recommendation, I think it addresses your point because we talked about that last night. So
So
we doubled it to 10.
Can
Yes.
Can
go
I
ahead.
address that quickly?
Go ahead, Eric.
If you ask every school district what they want, they'll tell you 8 or 10 acres. If you go to the Lead for Neighborhood Development, which is a document, you've all heard of the Lead buildings, Silver Creek Village project that we're doing, we're actually conforming to the Lead ND standards, and you have to accumulate points just like you do any other certification, but we're not going through the official certification process there, but we are meeting as many of the design considerations as we can. And one of their big concerns are the suburbanized versions of school parcels. And so I believe their maximum for an elementary school is 5 acres. And we did that on the Silver Creek Village property, and that's actually a South Summit School District property. And we met with the school board superintendent, I can't remember his name now, it's been a few years. And he had his architect there, and he said, well, we can't build an elementary school on 5 acres, and the architect actually says, well, you can, you just have to go to two stories. And he goes, well, that's more expensive, isn't it? And the architect said, no, it's actually cheaper because you're stacking your plumbing and stairs and you have all of the other, you have less facade to deal with, you have less grounds to take care of, and there's still plenty of room for all of the other components. And so I live in Sugar House, and the school behind me is Uinta Elementary, and I thought, it's a 2-story building and it functions really well, and you have drop off for parents that kids can't walk there, et cetera. And I measured the site, and it's almost exactly 5 acres. So it can be done. They just ask for more. And we run into this in every jurisdiction that we work in. We're doing a big master plan community in St. George, and it's the same thing. They want 8 acres, and the developer's given it to them because they have the space. But they can make a elementary school work on 8 acres or on 5 acres without a problem. And I would argue that a 2-story elementary school is actually much more interesting, architecturally. So anyway, sorry that there is a reason that we kept it at 5 acres, and that's really the reason.
I really appreciate your explanation. And sorry, can I just say one more thing before you? I've been to New York City. I used to work there. They have schools that are 3 stories tall, and the top floor is the basketball court gym outdoors with a fence around it, surrounded by high rises. So I do know it can work in the right setting, but is that something that would aesthetically fit into this concept?
Yeah, I feel it is. I mean, a 2-story building in this setting is to me is a non-issue. And again, you can Google, and I wouldn't even say this is, Sugar House isn't an urban environment. It's a organized suburban, living. I live on 1/3 of an acre, but it doesn't feel like it because of, the surroundings. So I think you can find that example. And I think what was interesting is when the superintendent realized that they were just used to asking for more, and that the other version actually worked and was actually cheaper. It was his architect from, I can't remember who they used, but he was sitting there and actually shook his head like, yeah, it's cheaper to build it that way. So I think it's something we can have the conversation. I think it's a great question. I think we just need to, just like these other items, we can just dive into that a little bit more.
So Eric was the land planner for, what's that subdivision called at the corner of Highway 80 and 40?
Silver Creek Village.
Silver Creek. And so we've kind of copied that because that's what Summit County, this is basically what Summit County, they've approved basically this concept over there, the lot sizes, the twin homes. I don't know if there's workforce housing over there or not, Eric.
Yeah, there's actually 330 units of the 1290.
So they have 12, of the 1290, yeah.
Yeah, and we only have 50,000 square feet of retail over there, by the way.
Hey, Eric,
Okay.
what we
No,
were,
those
what we
are all
were
good
trying
points. Thank you.
to achieve here was looking out 5 years. So your point about, I think, if you did an analysis for 3 years, this area is growing so fast. So and I think you brought up a great point about a 2-story building, but you may not do that to begin with. And then you may need room to add that addition, so to speak. So we thought we would pad this enough, kind of, I think this is where Chris was going as well. We give this a little bit of extra space. So if you had to double the size of that as our surrounding communities grow. Now, that's not to say there wouldn't be another school somewhere else, but this, we could achieve a dual purpose here and solve a lot of, reduced busing around that. But, perhaps you could even move the space, the school space to another area and achieve some cluster density. And I think that's possibility. So.
Yeah, Ralph, there's just really not enough flat ground for a school. That is the one element that we can't change, is they do like flat ground. That's for sure. The other thing that I would point out is that, the school is located where it's at, to have that. And I think we talked about this last week, is just having that rail trail, serve as access to that school site for as many kids as possible.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Like I said, Eric, really, I'm really impressed with your design.
But let us, there's room around the school. I mean, it sounds like you guys want us to drop some lots and so forth. So we can expand the school. That's not an issue. And when the school comes in, if they only want 5 acres, then we put the lots that are there. I mean, I don't see that as a problem at all.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nate.
And Nate, and Eric, I didn't notice this before, but where's the main entrance or bus drop off on the parcel? I'm not sure which road services it.
For the school?
Yeah.
It would be, to the south or to the top side. It would come in on that right above the word school.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It would loop in there. Yeah. We're really, I mean, the double-edged sword, having that rail trail there is that we can't really cross it too many times with roads, nor do we want to. But we want the school site to be located close to it.
Yeah, that's great for kids that are going to ride their bike to school too, right off the rail trail. That's very convenient.
Best thing we could see is a full bike corral.
I mean, I will say one more thing. I think it's important that and I don't know if Eric, you're going to address this, but, and I don't have the map in front of me, what you guys dropped, what you would like to, I guess the planning commission dropped the town center condominiums, but doing the condominiums, it actually brings vibrancy to your downtown.
Agreed.
I think that would be a big mistake to take all those units out of there. I mean, maybe the number's not 194, but I think, was it 60 or I don't remember, but
it was 80.
80. I think that would really hurt the commercial town center feel.
I tend to agree. And if we go back to the map, I mean, my concern is that the balance of being able to park and where those condominium residents are going to park, because those condominium buildings have, parking, podium parking. So are those just for residents, or do we anticipate that the visitors to the town center would be parking in those parking lots as well?
Yeah, so to address that quickly, the way this is designed, and I've worked in Park City, which is unbelievable now, for over 26 years. I don't know how I got that old, but understanding how to utilize topography to your advantage is something that we've really focused on. So the parking under those condominium buildings, for the most part, on the left side there would be just for residents. But the concept would be to have, on-street parking, angled parking, Main Street type, 45-degree parking along the existing Richardson Flat Road in front of those buildings, that would serve as additional parking for, the grocer or whatever retail uses on the top side of that street, but also as guest parking for those condo buildings on the bottom side, the north side of the street. The other thing that, that we did add to this, and you can see in the dark kind of brick red on the front of those condo buildings is, and we'd drawn it there this way last time, but we just hadn't really called it out, is that we would love to see the front, 16 or 20 feet of those condo buildings be, maybe it's a live work type setting, so that the streetscape is, a walk up insurance agent, or, maybe the condo that's above there is a a real estate office, and they live above that. So it's really a way to sneak some Main Street type retail office, boutique shops in there. And then the other thing it does is it pushes all of that parking, behind that. So you don't see any of that structured parking.
We don't want you to see, yeah, exactly. We don't want you to see the parking as you're driving up or down, Richardson Flats Road. So one question that came up last for the Planning Commission, I think it was Thursday, and we didn't know the answer, but right now there's about 24 feet of asphalt. I think Ralph walked it off. But that right of way is 100-foot wide right of way. Richardson Flats Road.
Yeah, so we have, typically with angled parking, we're probably talking about 62 feet back of curb to back of curb. So we have plenty of room to maneuver through there. And I always say that, on-street parking is the cheapest parking you can build, because nobody looks at it like a parking lot, but it's very, very easily utilized.
So if someone could send me that, what do you call it, the spreadsheet, maybe Eric and Thomas and I can get busy on it and just see what really works. Because a couple things that are very, very expensive. Obviously, sewer and water are going to be very expensive for this project because it's not in the area. And then the access is off Highway 248, because we're running somewhere around a half a mile maybe, without having any kind of, usually when you build a road like that, you put homes on it or whatever, but there's, we're not going to be able to do that on this. So there's a couple things that are very expensive, part of this development. And so let us just play around with this. I hate taking all your guys' time unless you guys want to, but I think Thomas and I and Eric can really come up with, I love the plan, actually. I love a lot of parts about it. The townhomes, I agree. There's a lot of townhomes in the area, but I was hoping we could price those townhomes at like $480 to $520. And that'd be the cheapest thing in the area. And, but if we get rid of those, you're just not going to be able to. I know in Park City Heights, I saw a listing that was $2.2 million. That would be great for some of our project, but that's not the market I want to hit. I want families to be able to live here. And so that's why we have all the different size of lots. We have 3 different size lots, and we had 2 different size of townhomes. And we can add those cottages, which will be another different kind of housing. And so let us play around with it and just see what we can come up with that I think works.
I like that, Dave.
Hopefully you guys think it works also.
I think it's a great idea. This document is part of the package for tonight. It's on our website, I think.
Okay.
Alicia can confirm that, but I think she's put it in the package for tonight's meeting.
Yeah, we'll look about why, making the park or making the school site bigger. I agree. What the last thing you want to do is put stipulations on there that you can't meet, like we talked about the grocery store, only 25,000 feet. Well, what if a 27,000 grocery store wants to come in? Or what if the school district wants 7 acres? We have to be able to accommodate that. And so I think we make it a little bit bigger. And if they come in and want 5 acres, we'll put housing where the 2 acres that we set aside. I think that's smart. That's smart planning.
And Nate, I tend to agree with you. I like the idea of hitting a price point, because that kind of housing at that price point is so rare in this area. And it's a really important market that we need to try to serve.
Yeah,
I can tell you that I'm just pulling it up to confirm it. So give me a second, but I'm fairly confident that a recent resale in Shoreline went for 1.6 mil.
Oh my gosh.
What?
So
It's just insanity, really.
I'm not suggesting otherwise, but I'm just pulling this up here.
I mean, I will say we are seeing so much activity in Deer Waters. We are trying to pull permits on 18 houses all at one time. And in Deer Springs, we are pulling permits on 45 houses before the end of the year. Both of those, we've just had so much activity, and our prices, you know, I guess in Deer Springs, I want to say we're about 650 to 700, and I don't really know how high it goes with the townhomes, but I know the homes are over $1 million. They have great views. But Deer Waters, we start out at 650 and it goes over $1 million for a townhouse.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the data I pulled. I mean, a Shoreline home went for 1.4, a Hideout Trail duplex, one of the new ones that's just got being built, 1.4 roughly. So yeah. So
that's not, that's what we want for some of this area, but that's not what we want for.
No, I agree with you, Nate. It's not
Totally agree.
I don't think it's what we want either. We want to get a mix. We want to
Yes.
start to get a much more diversified community, and we've got to figure out how to get some price points in there.
And we got to figure out how to get families.
Right.
Yeah, we got to be sensitive
Yes.
to how we do that with you, so that we don't, you know, we don't want to force us into these $2 million type units again, because I think there's plenty of them around.
Yeah, so
let's try and get to some.
I think if you just I mean, Thomas is as good as they get, and so's Eric. So we can come up with a plan that reduces some density. We still maintain what we want to accomplish. And then I'll get the feasibility study going on the chairlift, and maybe it's not the best thing, you know, it's a lazy way to hike. But I do think the chairlift adds a lot of vibrancy to downtown.
It does.
But it may be way too expensive for the homeowners. I know a friend of mine did the one by the Waldorf, and the HOA pays for it.
Well, you know, you've got the town lift in Park City as well. And, you know, when we came out here as tourists, and, you know, you got to buy a ticket for that. So, you know, it's operated by, you know, someone, a PCMR, maybe, I don't know, during the summer. But yeah, if it's a pay to ride, I don't see a problem with that. And I see people willing to pay a certain number. I mean, you go to Alta now and you pay, I think it's $10 to ride the thing up and back to get to the Albion Basin. And
so let us do the study. I mean, the last thing I want to do, honestly, is charge for this. So let me get the study done. We put it on there because I would like to see it built. But I've heard people say that it's not fair to the homeowners in this area or whatever. And, you know, maybe it's not, but I don't think it's that detailed. You have some power expenses, you have some people working there, expenses for basically 6 months a year. I don't think it's a killer, but.
I guess I'm thinking of a hybrid, Nate, where if you're if you're a resident of this area, there's an HOA fee and it gives you a pass. And if you're a tourist, then it's a walk-up.
There you go. Yeah.
Fee.
Yeah. But I like the idea. Let me do the study, make sure it works.
Yeah.
I'm committed to doing it if it works and you guys want to see it. But once again, you have to have some density in there to make all that stuff work.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's a draw for the commercial too, is it not? Because you've got a
Huge
plaza there, and you know,
Yeah.
great to show up at the plaza and then take a ride up to the top and eat your
Well,
lunch or something.
Yeah, show up and grab a burger and a beer, and you get a pass to go. You don't have to pay then.
Yeah, that's another option.
So obviously a study,
Validated parking, huh?
yeah, a study won't be done in the time that we need it by next week, but I will get that done, and Bruce and Polly can address it in the MDA.
Yeah, we'll come up with some language about all these pieces as far as, you know, because they're not, we're again, it's all based on feasibility and making sense, so we can do that.
Yeah, and I want to say, I think the planning commission has just done a fabulous job. We were on the phone for about 3-4 hours, I think, on Thursday, and they just didn't feel like they got enough done, so they wanted to meet prior to you guys meeting. So they met Monday again for a couple hours, but it was a very, very good meeting. At that point, and I had him on the phone today, but I had Brad Cahoon, my attorney, my environmental attorney on the phone, but I could tell we weren't going to get to him tonight. So I just told him maybe we could do it some other time, and have Eric. And then I had my traffic consultant, but he had to leave at 6:50. So, but we did all that with each of them took about an hour with the planning commission, and we had great dialogue, great questions. And so, yeah, they've just been great. I mean, really, really good to work with.
I guess I should say thanks, Nate. This is Ralph. So
Yep,
appreciate
Ralph,
the
thank you.
comment. I think you can see the directions we're trying to move in, whether
Yes.
those are hard and fast, I think there's just terrific comments here that in our time frame we couldn't consider, but I do think, everything from clustered development, et cetera, makes sense. Question is how do you make that achievable with some of the densities? So be great to see another, crack at this, or 2 cracks at this,
Yeah,
let's
I think
why not do a couple of iterations that show different approaches, slightly different approaches.
let's get Thomas and Eric together, and we'll really, now that we have some of your comments, we'll get busy on this. You guys will be happy. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think we're, between the work that you guys have done, the work that the planning commission has done, I think we're closing in on something that's starting to make sense for the kinds of things we want to address.
yes,
So I think we got some overarching goals that we talked about earlier. So that's, and as long as we keep, and trying to get all those to coexist isn't easy. And I think, that's our challenge is to figure out, how do we, as we talked earlier, how do you deal with the fact that we want to reduce traffic while still allowing cars to come here? So that, those are the kinds of almost, opposite kind of goals that we've got, but, we got to find a way to have it work. So we're getting towards the end of what the planning commission has done. So let's kind of go through these if we're through talking about at least the pieces that are new or different here than what we've talked about before. So there was, there's discussions, again, we're trying to figure out how do we make the connections to the various trail network and the whole trail process that's going on. And then the other piece we mentioned earlier was this connection to public transit. Again, we have to get partners in the public transit space. And there's a lot going on in the public transit space right now, if you're reading the papers. So we've got some negotiating to do at some point to figure out how do we do all this holistically in the joint planning arena that we keep talking about. Because this is an issue that's bigger than any one of the areas. We've got to work on this jointly. We mentioned, that we need to come up with some phasing that ensures that we've got the right balance of towns, of commercial along with the residential that's going to start to use it right away. And we talked about how that would be, that we come up with some language in the MDA to think about how that gets phased. So that's number 3 there.
Mayor, before we move too far off of 2, it has conversation about transit over to Mayflower and Deer Valley and Park City. So are we saying that those are things we need to keep on our radar, or are there plans in the works along those lines, or what's the
Well, I mean, that's part of the connectivity discussions that we need to have, Jerry. I mean, MIDA is already, for the MIDA portion of the project in the Jordanelle, for example, talking about providing transit along the Jordanelle Parkway.
Okay.
From all those developments, over to the Mayflower, for example. So how do we piggyback into that? And is Richardson Flat parking going to continue to be a preferred, a desired vision for either Summit County or Park City to try and get people to use a transit system? And how do we tie to that? I mean, so I don't think we can answer specifically other than saying that we will ensure that we have, I don't know, we have to think about, do we say that we would have a shuttle network that would enable folks to connect to those pieces of infrastructure if they're going to continue to be used? We'd put some funds aside, we'd agree on some amount. I don't have the answer to that, but I think we need to think about, because again, it's sadly, it's a very complicated space right now, and getting more complicated with the separation of Summit and Park City's transportation network. So I don't know where we're going to end up. So we have to think about some language there, and I'll put it back to the planning team to figure out how to put some language in on how we want to make sure that we've allocated some piece of this puzzle to enable connectivity should it exist.
And the second paragraph of number 2, talking about that that additional chair potential of coming to Deer Springs or Deer Waters, I'm guessing that's going to have to travel over some MIDA land, as well as
travel over a lot of land that isn't ours to use.
Well, but Deer Springs is, so I don't want a chair going over my house, or so that changes the plan perhaps of what's going on in Deer Springs as well, in order to provide a corridor for that chair to come down.
I think that's a little harder just because Deer Springs is already approved and they've started building homes. I mean, we could look at that in our study, but to ask Deer Springs to help with that would be really, really hard, because first of all, they don't have any easement set aside for that, and they're already going, so that's a little bit harder.
Yeah, and I just want to add that with Deer Springs, we had envisioned a 10-foot wide paved biking, walking trail that would connect Deer Springs up to the Jordanelle Parkway. That was our non-motorized e-bike transportation corridor. So we have something already planned for Deer Springs.
Yeah, and I would say that's probably half in right now. And if you remember, at one of the meetings, part of the approval process was we had to get a dirt road from where we ended the asphalt up to there, and we've done that. So, and it's amazing. Every time I come up to Hideout, someone is on that trail. So it's really cool seeing it getting used. So.
Yeah, I wrote it today, Nate. It's a little steep in one spot, but it'll be great. I know that it's going to take you end of phase 2, beginning of phase 3 to pave that thing, but getting it paved as soon as possible will enable us to make that bicycling, hiking connection, all from Hideout all the way up to the Jordanelle.
Well, with how great sales have been, it was a couple year thing, and we're pulling permits on 45 houses by the end of this year. So it's not that far away. I'd imagine if sales go like they're doing, it'll be be finished next year.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that'll be a huge connection. And, I personally, I don't see how we do a chairlift into Deer Springs. I'm still waiting. I'm going to wait for the feasibility study on the other one. I almost would rather see all that extra money spent on something else. Other things that might enable connectivity or recreation that aren't just so expensive as a chairlift. every time I drive into Moab, I just have to say this, I see the abandoned gondola. I don't want that to be us either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris, for your comments.
Sure.
So anything else on 2?
Nope.
Okay, so 3, we had talked about earlier that we're going to come up with some language on phasing to make sure that we get a good balance, and I'll let the planning team come up with some ideas for that, based on the experience that they have on how you do that. We're not going to build all the residential at once, nor are we going to build all the commercial at once.
Yeah, I think we've already spoken to 3 and maybe even 4.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
5 is a no-brainer. We know that.
right. So the other thing, and this is sort of an ancillary thought, but I'll throw it out there just because it's not specific to this development, but it's impacted by this development, which is, and it's more of a comment for Thomas than anyone, is if this were to proceed, then it addresses a bunch of needs and a number of things that will come with this, and therefore would cause us to think about how do we use other spaces around Hideout, recognizing if this were to move forward. So let's just put that in the back of our head here and say, if we were to move forward and this brings X, Y, and Z, then if somebody on the other end of town wants to do the same X, Y, and Z, we need to think about that, so that we don't disadvantage the ability for this place to deliver what we're hoping it's going to deliver. So we need to think about that as well at some point.
In the last sentence of number 5, I want to address, because I'm trying to understand the need for deed restriction in this case. If it is zoned as, open space isn't a zone, trying to remember what the name of it is, natural preservation, or what's the other one? There's 2 of them that are cousins, but if it's zoned to one of those, zoning to something else is a discretionary act on the part of the planning commission. So it's not like the developer could say, oh, I want to develop on this now. Today's developer or tomorrow's developer would have to seek permission from the town to do it. So I'm not sure a deed restriction is necessarily required unless there's an attempt to say in perpetuity that it will be, preserved. I think just having it zoned
Jerry,
that way.
Thing about zoning is zoning can be addressed,
Well, zoning can be changed as well.
Right, yeah. So as the makeup of the town and the town council and the planning commission morphs over the next 20 years, it's possible that a different council would see a different set of goals and needs and be willing to, move that space into, developable space, for example.
Well,
So
and that's kind of my
the only
point, is that I'm not sure we need to deed restrict it. I think if we zone it today, then there is a process to changing that zone, and it requires.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you got a council that thought about this differently than the present one, in the future, and they wanted to develop it, and we wanted to say, no, we want this to stay green forever, we might have to think about some language.
Yeah, so that's what we have to decide. I mean, I'm saying the only reason we would deed restrict it is if we want to make sure that it stays that way forever.
Right.
Yeah, Jerry, just bear in mind some of this land that's in the open space is really steep.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if
I'd like
part
to
of,
talk a little bit about the open space too. We just call it open space, but I'd like to see more definitive types of things that are going in there. We really have not addressed parks. We haven't addressed a community center. One of the things that I think that our entire regional area could go in together on is a senior center. I know that they're having a lot of issues in Park City with the current senior center that's not going to be there very much longer. And maybe a combination community center, senior center type of thing. We haven't really addressed any of that. And I think it's important that we talk about some of these recreational open space amenities and get that into the MDA or into some kind of plan. That's just my feeling.
I think that's a great comment, Carol. I think we want to talk about at least a list of the kind of things that we would like to try and accommodate depending on what the topography will allow.
Right. And
You're right. There's a lot of trails shown, but there's a limited number of parks. There is an assisted living facility reflected.
but is that more important than perhaps the senior center for that would serve more people in our area?
Yeah, that's a good question, Carol. Those are things that we are hoping that in again trying to drive a regional planning group, that we would begin to get input from our neighboring municipalities and understand who's got plans to do what, better understand who's got plans to do what around those kinds of things. What's the right school need? If they've already got 3 elementaries planned, then maybe we don't need to be building the elementary, we need to be building a middle school, or vice versa. If those are the dialogues that I'm hoping we don't have to do this in a bubble, and that we can communicate across municipal lines with the planning team to think about these things so that we can make the right tweaks to make this as useful in solving concern areas as possible. But I'm with you completely, Carol. Those are really great questions. And I think what we could probably put in here as language is saying amongst the open space areas, the use of those is to be determined at a future date based on needs identified as the project continues, progresses or something. So that we could come back and say, okay, we need, we're not just going to build bike and hike trails. We're going to put some parks in. We're going to make sure there's a place to create, pickleball courts are fairly small, and they should be able to create some kind of flat space to get 1 or 2 of those in, whatever. So maybe that's a way to get at that.
Yeah, I want to thank Carol for bringing up the senior center for all the seniors out there. It's actually a need, and the idea of having it. I mean, I know we can't be all things to all people. This is only 340 acres or whatever it is. It's not a huge area. We just have to pick and choose, as the mayor was saying, of the things that I think are most important. But thanks for thinking of the seniors, Carol. I do think senior center needs to be someplace, and ideally on a bus route, so that the seniors don't have to drive to it.
And it would be a nice central location. And why not combine it with a community center? Like have it accessible to both elements of our population, or all elements.
Yep.
So.
But we'll go back to the planners and see what they can brainstorm now that they've gotten some feedback.
one other idea that has come up is putting something in the AMDA that would limit the ability of the property owner to elect to go into MIDA. And so I wanted to get your input on whether that's something you would like to see in this agreement.
Well, the town would have to agree to be part of a MIDA area, wouldn't
Well,
we?
Jerry, that would be under today's laws, but as we know, laws change.
Ah, yeah.
And so I would suggest that if we want an input on that, we should put some language in on that.
Well, maybe the language isn't a prohibition, but that the town has to agree to.
Right. It would be what the current law is, even if the law changes.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll say, I don't know where that came from, but we're not talking to them at all. But, maybe they will when if we get approved. But I think that's a good thing. Just put it in there that the town has to approve it. Has nothing to do with the developer.
Yeah, I would approve of that, think that's wise, Polly, to just put that language in. We would definitely want to have to approve it even if the law changes.
Yes, I think that's a great idea.
Thanks.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's a kind of a preamble here that into the recommendation from the Planning Commission. Again, I really appreciate the work that the Planning Commission did on this. This is really, really well thought out effort. So one of the things that I wonder if we want to, because we've got, I know we have a public input session coming up on this on Monday. Do we think that is sufficient enough to make sure that we have a good sense of what the Hideout constituency is thinking? Or should we be sending out an email letter or something saying, please join that, please send us your comments, regardless of how you feel, just so we know that Hideout people are giving us input? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out for a thought process.
It's an interesting idea, Mayor, because, I know your mailbox and my mailbox both have been getting, public comment, and I don't think a single one of them has been within the town of Hideout. So it's difficult to assess where our constituency is on this. And the public meeting, we can ask people to, say what community they're a part of or what they're representing. But I don't know how much input we'll get from our own residents. So if we had some sort of a way to solicit that feedback in another way or in a parallel path, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I mean, you saw how difficult it was to control this meeting. Imagine what's going to happen on Monday when we've got, public input. Who knows what it's going to turn out like, but I'm fairly certain, based on the feedback that I've gotten also personally, the vast majority of input we're going to get is from outside of our own borders. So, and, of course, I personally welcome the feedback of the most affected areas. So, the unincorporated Wasatch County HOAs that are right near this project, those people, I'm considering their feedback, very seriously as I would to a Hideout resident. But then we were getting feedback from all over the place, the public, but not the public that live in this area. So I would think that it's important that we try to make sure we've reached enough of our local residents so that they're not drowned out in Monday's session, which, by the way, is on a holiday. That's a Columbus Day.
Yeah, but it's
a bank holiday.
It's a bank holiday, but it's not a total business holiday. I mean, most people work on Columbus Day, except banks. So, that's the best we could do with the schedule we have.
That's okay. So I don't know how you think we can reach everyone. I know, Mayor, you have email addresses
I
for
mean,
water bills and things.
Yeah, I mean, we can reach it. We can reach everyone through through an email. Almost 100% of the landowners in the town have email for receiving their their utility billing and so forth. So we can get a letter out very quickly. I'll get a draft tomorrow and send it out for some comment to you guys first, and then we can get it out to those folks.
Wouldn't it go out very similar to our newsletter that comes out periodically?
Yeah. Well, Carol's been asking me for input for that newsletter, so I think we could
got it.
dedicate one to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. That the introduction at the Planning Commission again, and I appreciate that the Planning Commission was able to put themselves in a position of a headspace where they could say, if it were to proceed, then these would be our concerns, even if I personally did not want it to proceed. So that's just shows us all the quality of the people that we have working with us to try and make Hideout a better place. And for that, I'm greatly appreciative.
That was the intention, Phil, to divorce ourselves, put ourselves in the position of responsibility of providing a kind of a technical view on this, not an individual political view. So I think that's, otherwise we would have never come, we would have needed 2 days to come to consensus, I think. So I think that kind of softened the, and then focused us on the right things to include in here.
Yeah,
I want to echo my appreciation of the Planning Commission and the work that they did on this document. And Ralph, I also want to reach out and say, we've had a lot of discussion tonight, and the back half of the document we didn't go over with a fine-tooth comb. So I'll ask you, was there something in the back half of the document that you wanted to make sure that we had a discussion about?
No, and I designed the document in these 3 parts, kind of a view to absolute core conditions, to the recommended or view to what we ideally want. So that's that center section. And the last section is, again, kind of that preamble to state, to be fair to everyone individually, that we have varying opinions, but let's come to some conclusions, and based upon the conditions and the recommendations that we associated with. And then what I tried to do is really think through, and what we tried to do here is, create an environment of what value does this add to not only to Hideout. And I think, Carol, you brought up a little bit about the community center, and we talked a little bit about that last night. Senior center, community center, kind of focused on the community center piece, so that it was open to more people than less. Because we also thought a lot about the donut hole that we're surrounding, and that donut hole. And I know, my daughter, I know a lot of those folks over there. It's a much younger generation, new professionals that have young children. So if we look at this in a regional sense, we wanted to address, the combination of folks that are there between us and the new development, and make sure that if there is value, that we called that out specifically in these last half a dozen bullets, so to speak. So that was the approach, the intent, and how this was structured, if that makes sense.
It does. One thing that is in here that we haven't talked about, that I think we might want to take a minute about, is the view shed comment, which is the second to last dot here. That, and Eric's done a nice job with some of his 3D pictures to try and give us a sense of, what shows and what won't show from what angles. I think that's it's critical that we do the work to address the concerns that I've seen about being a visual blight and that kind of thing. Again, I'm not, it will show. It can't be invisible, but I think there's things we can do to make it as approachable and I guess maybe the word I'm looking for is unobtrusive as possible, while still making sure that people know that it's there and can get to it. And I don't want to hide it either, because I don't want people to drive by it saying, "Where is this place?" But I think that's a good comment that you guys put in there at the end there, Ralph. And we ought to make sure we do some kind of. I'll challenge again Thomas and the team to think a little bit about the view sheds and the look and feel as this place is approached. I don't know. I don't want it to look like stuff that's on the side of 15 or 215 as you're going down those roads, which just looks like, just, constant buildings and parking lots. So we gotta, I don't know what an example of what one we like looks like, but I think that's worth challenging ourselves to make sure that we understand and use landscape to our advantage to address this very comment. What else? Council, are you there?
I have
Yes.
nothing else. I think we've covered a lot tonight.
Mm. Yeah. I think we've given
All right.
Nate, we've given Nate, ideas on where we're coming from, what we'd like to see. And then he's got to work on that and still make sure it works for him.
Yeah, and I hope we've given Polly and Bruce while he was here, and Nate can pass on and Eric certainly has heard it as well. The kind of things we want to get into the document as we start drafting the language to cover these kinds of key areas. So, Polly, what else do you need from us?
I think that's we've got a great start between the planning commission's input and your review of it and your other inputs. I think we've got a great start, and I think that having Thomas meet with Eric and Nate will also help continue to move this along. So I think we're doing good.
Okay.
We
Well,
noticed
then-
an executive session following.
Yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to do that next. I was just going to say, if we're ready to do that, then I would need a motion to close the public portion of the meeting and move the council to executive
I so move.
for the purposes of discussing pending or threatening litigation. Reasonably imminent litigation, personnel matters, and/or sale acquisition of real property as needed.
Okay.
Just want to get that on the record.
All right.
Sorry,
Now
go
I
ahead.
so move.
Thank you, Carol.
Chris is going to second that.
Thank you, Chris. So, Jerry,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Carol.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you all for participating, and those that participated, and thank those who are listening for listening. I am going to, I think that what I'm going to do for the council is to end the meeting and then ask you to just come back in. That way I don't have to spend 5 minutes kicking every individual off.
We want to make sure our live stream is also stopped as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know if
let's end the
we
meeting.
need a different meeting or to ensure that doesn't happen, or, you know.
Alicia, can you help us with that?
I'll make sure it gets shut off.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So thank you all. I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna end the meeting, and then I'm gonna ask you to dial back in, and we'll just select the 6 of us that need to be here, 5 of us that need to be here. 6 of